The late and very great Johnny Thompson was our best friend. He was our mentor. He was the original judge on this show, Penn and Teller Fool Us, and he knew all kinds of magic. He was the greatest magician we've ever met. He did every kind of magic. He did doves, of course. He did cards. He did coins, all kinds of close-up. He did mentalism. He did illusions, stage illusions, full shows of stage illusions. He did sword swallowing, fire eating, carnival stuff. And I once asked him, I was kind of out of questions, I once asked him a stupid and obvious question. I said, Johnny, what's the hardest magic trick you ever learned? And he said, to cut a tomato. Turns out that Johnny, early in his life, got a job selling cheap knives on the street and at carnivals. And the way you sold these cheap knives, you demonstrated how good they were by cutting a tomato. Now, it turns out, doesn't matter how good the knife is if the person cutting the tomato is really, really good at it. And Johnny was so good and so fast at cutting tomatoes, he could do all the usual lines you do. You can cut that tomato so thin, you can feed your family for a week with one tomato. And you can cut it so thin that you can read the newspaper through it. Now, I'm not claiming to be cutting this tomato well. As a matter of fact, I'm not cutting this tomato well at all. I'm just demonstrating that you couldn't read through that at all. I'm just demonstrating that Johnny, it was beautiful to see him cut a tomato. He was perfect at it. And we thought we should do a trick for Johnny based on cutting a tomato. And so we're gonna take this tomato, clearly cut in half, and Teller will magically restore it. That's a trick Johnny would have liked. The cut and restored tomato, and there it is in one piece, a whole tomato that you actually saw cut in half. Don't believe us? Take a look at this. When he puts it down here on the table, you can see it's a whole tomato. We made it into a whole tomato. We took a tomato that was cut in half, made it into a whole tomato. You can see at every angle there, it's a whole tomato. Now, some of you would say, wait a minute, that was all done with mirrors. And it wasn't all done with mirrors. That's a whole tomato. A whole tomato for Johnny Thompson. Hey, and now it looks like two tomatoes. See, looks like two tomatoes. Now, because it's a mirror, it looks like two tomatoes. So that's for you, Johnny Thompson. And I'm not going to practice the cutting anymore. Two tomatoes.